the most alpha manly men in this world are so in tune with their emotions. They cry, they talk about their emotions. That's what, in my opinion, a true man is that they are in tune with their emotions.
In today's episode of Leadershipedelics, we're joined by Sabba Nazhand, a successful entrepreneur and leader who has ventured into the world of psychedelics and mental health. Sabba shares his powerful story of overcoming burnout and discovering the transformative power of psychedelics, ultimately redefining his approach to leadership and personal growth. He is now the co-founder of Mission Club, a business advisor to Retreat-Microdose, and involved with Wavepaths, all focusing on the intersection of psychedelics and personal development. We dive deep into the importance of vulnerability and emotional openness for fathers and leaders, and how psychedelics can be a catalyst for self-discovery and profound change. Don't miss this enlightening conversation packed with valuable insights and inspiration. And see you on the other side. Sabba,
Yes.
welcome to Leadershipedelics. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I love your location here. There's so much to look at.
There is.
For people listening, they're really missing out. Your bookshelf, that I gotta ask you before we go too deep. There are those statues.
Yes.
They look like a walking elephant. What is that?
That's amazing. So those little figurines are made by a famous artist out of Brooklyn, goes by Kaws, Kaws. So I don't consider myself a art collector by any means, but I love these figurines, and we have a handful of them around the house. So yeah, they're like Mickey Mouse, but kind of look like elephants. They're just really really cool.
Oh, that's great. I love that. It's a nice feel. And
thank you.
Yeah, I thought I saw a walking elephant from far away.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like.
That's great. So where are you calling from?
Right outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay, good. So we're like we could be a little further away from each other, I guess.
Just
if you were in
a little
Florida.
bit.
But the other Washington. And I understand congratulations are in order too. I wanted to start with that.
Thank you.
You could be leaving us on the show right now because you're expecting a boy or girl.
A girl, baby number 2, any day now. So we're very excited. So yes, this could be a dramatic podcast where my wife comes out and says, "Hey, we need to go." So, you might get the most views. You might get the most views out of all your podcasts. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm sure, that's the kind of views, that's the kind of, that thing you want on TikTok. That'd be great.
Exactly.
Then, I'd have some crazy music on top of that, and I'm
oh
set.
My God.
And if the car isn't working and you have to give birth like right there, it's like,
we'll just keep recording.
Like,
we'll keep recording.
We'll just keep it on. Anyway, so welcome again.
Thank you.
Let's get back to who you are, and if you can do your quick intro in a nutshell of who you are and what you're working on right now, and then we'll talk about your journey.
Sure. Yes. So thank you again for having me. So my name is Sabba Nazhand. Couple things about me. I'm originally from Iran. I was born in Tehran, Iran. We migrated to the U.S. when I was a child during post-revolution and the war, and pretty much in the D.C. area. I've bounced around quite a bit in my life, but my hometown in the U.S. has been right outside of the Washington, D.C. area. Yeah, married, have a beautiful toddler. I got baby number 2 on the way. And then from the professional side, just recently I have transitioned from my W-2 work in the big corporate tech scene and have shifted over to the psychedelic ecosystem. So today I am the partner and chief strategy officer at a company called Mission Club, which is an education and investment platform that is democratizing a global community of angel investors into the psychedelic space. So think of angel list for psychedelics.
Oh, great.
And then because I have so much free time, I'm also a business advisor for a company called Retreat-Microdose. It's a microdosing education platform. So it provides content, community, coaching, etc. And additionally, for an awesome tech company called Wavepaths. It's an intuitive music tool that facilitates live, unique, personalized music experiences for the therapeutic and personal use. So
Yeah.
that's my day to day.
That's wonderful. And I was on the beta of Wavepath. I think
Oh,
they
amazing.
started maybe a couple of years, 2-3 years ago. I
Yes.
don't know. It feels
Yes.
like it's been a while.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk more about that when we get to that. Your journey. Wow. You started in the war-torn Iran. You had to leave the
Yes.
country with your parents. Um, and from our earlier conversations, that impacted your way of looking at the world. Can you talk about a little bit about that?
I was born right, in the middle of the war. I was born 2 months early as a premature baby because due to the stress and just everything going on, my mother just could not hold me in anymore. So I was born 2 months early as a preemie, and my journey into this world started with chaos. Our family doctor told my parents that I needed a blood transfusion to be able to stay alive. And the only place I could go was a hospital across town. So my father had to say, goodbye to my mother and my sister and drive me through the middle of the war to get this blood transfusion. So that was kind of like my hurrah into this earth. And it's a beautiful country, amazing place. And the two memories I have of Iran, and I was young, as huddling in front of our window, looking at gunfire, bombs, and explosions in our town, and playing in the backyard of my grandmother's house. Everything else is just completely, I don't remember anything else. Those are the two memories that stand out to me until this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you what do you think? Do you think it's trauma that resulted in you preserving those two memories?
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned how that kind of impacted my life. Well, we had to immigrate here to the US. My parents had to start over in life. Like my father lost his pension in Iran because of the government takeover, and everything was we had to start over. I couldn't speak the language, and growing up, as I got older, I started having this like disdain for my culture, my Iranian culture, the religion, God, and because all I can feel and see was my parents going through hell and watching the news, and they are just immersed in what's happening into their country. So growing up, I naturally became extremely fascinated with foreign policies, how governments interact with other countries. And that was actually really molded my adulthood, or my young adulthood. I had a lot of rage and anger because of how the world was, and from my view, constructed and built, and just felt it was unfair. And that, I think that trauma started with my childhood and birth. And for the longest time I wanted to be in foreign policy and save the world in that regard, but it brought me so much pain and darkness. Like I had rage because of that. So that had, I think, to your point, it was all connected to the trauma of my birth and being in Iran.
Yeah, the birth. I recall reading one of the books by Stanislas Grof, and he talks about a lot about the trauma that people encounter during the actual birth, and how sometimes you could relive that later on in life in entheogenic experiences. He was doing a lot of breath work, not necessarily psychedelics, but you can relive that in psychedelic experience. I'm curious. In the subsequent psychedelic experience we'll get back to, is this something you had some insights in as well, and the traumatic birth?
So as far as my psychedelic experiences, absolutely. I think a lot of that came out during my several experiences and journeys that I've had in the last, call it 5 to 7 years. It was kind of two parts. It was one, again, I grew up with this disdain for everyone around me. I was mad at my
Yeah.
parents because I felt like they didn't give me the life that I wanted. I was mad at myself. And all these things came up in my journeys of, wow, like, yes, there's trauma, but there was so much love. Like the fact that my father risked his life and decided to say goodbye potentially to his mother, to his wife and daughter for the last time to save my life.
Yeah.
I didn't really connect those dots as a kid. I didn't understand that until my psychedelic experiences, that I was just like, wow, my father saved my life, and I still get emotional thinking about it. And so psychedelics really helped me understand that, like, yes, there was trauma, and yes, it was hard and dark, but there was so much love and
Yeah.
compassion and beauty in the way I was brought up and born, in the sacrifices my family made for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was your life before you crossed path with psychedelics? Like if you had to take a snapshot
Yes.
of Sabba before the
Yeah.
psychedelic intervention, where were you heading?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I reflect on that quite a bit. I think for me, I mentioned this a little bit. It was most of my life was this disdain for
Yeah.
religion and God and culture and even my sense of self. I was closed off. I was a shell of myself. I pretended to be the fun guy, the nice guy, the cool guy around people growing up and wanting to be loved and liked, but I was never the real Saba or the real guy. And that really, as I got older, started coming out more of like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I believe in. I don't know what like love is. Like I can go on and on. And
Yeah.
there was this interesting contradictory um like life I lived. I mentioned the disdain and the anger, but then on the flip side, I was also behind closed doors spending long nights just listening to, for example, Native American ceremonial music, chants, and I would just cry, and I would listen to read poems from Hafez and Rumi, like famous Iranian poets, and lectures on metaphysics. And I couldn't process that depth and beauty, but I knew that there was a connection. So then I would wake up, and then I would be that angry, fake guy, for all
Mm.
intents and purposes. So that was really pretty much most of my life as a young adult and adult. Just didn't know who I was. I didn't understand like what love meant. I didn't know how to love. I didn't know how to get love,
Yeah.
receive love. And it kind of blows my mind that if you would have asked me 5 years ago, what does love mean to you? I would have said something generic. And that was before I, was able to sit with plant medicine and really integrate that into my life.
So how did plant medicine show up in your life? Like, I mean, you were clearly on the path of uh, intersection with plant medicine. I mean, you were listening to medicine music or Native
Yeah.
American music. You
Yeah.
were listening to you were researching like spiritual texts
Yes.
as well. What was the tipping point?
Yeah. The tipping point was, even though I had explored a little bit with plant medicine, call it in the last 5, 7 years, around the pandemic was when it all clicked to me that I was in a really dark place. I had to do something to change, to
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, to save my life, to save my family. And I decided at that moment to make a shift into healing myself, focusing on therapy and understanding my trauma and becoming okay with my dark shadows. And that was the tipping point of from experimental to dabbling into, okay, I want to take this seriously and really understand and research and study how plant medicine psychedelics can actually be a healing modality, and integrate that into my day-to-day life. And I decided, for all intents and purposes, to take the plunge and started having some very deep and heavy and transcending psychedelic experiences in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it sounds like you really took the time to research it as well. I mean, there was a
Yes.
tipping point but you were heading in that direction for a long time.
That's correct.
And you did take the, I'm just saying that for the listeners, you did take the time to research how to approach it.
Yes.
How did you have any other practices before you cross path with plant medicine, such as yoga, meditation, mindfulness, or breath work that kind of helped you already on that journey?
Yes. Most of the people in my life will tell me I'm very black and white and I just jump into something, which to some extent I did with psychedelics once I decided I wanted to. But up until then, a lot of journaling, a lot of, I did traditional therapy, and that was kind of like the stepping stone of like baby steps into plant medicine for me, because therapy helped me understand why I had the feelings, the thoughts and the negative aspects of myself, and where those came from to some extent. And that helped me understand that, okay, it's deeper than that. And that went into journaling, understanding my thought patterns, why I do the things that I do at that moment. And from journaling, it went to light breath work. And then that went into plant medicine.
Okay. And which plant medicine are we talking about?
Well, this one was Bufo, was because kind of when I decided, like I said, black or white, I decided to take the plunge and shatter myself into a billion pieces. So, yeah.
Can you paint that picture of that first experience?
No, I cannot. No. So no, I
don't think too many of us can.
Exactly. There are no words in my vocabulary that can really explain that experience. However, I will try my best. So for me, and there's a word of caution here as well that I want to talk about. For me, that experience, it's almost like a movie. It happens so quickly, as folks who have experience with this, happens so quickly in that moment that I was about to break through into whatever realm or universal journey I went into. All I kept saying was, I've been waiting for this my whole life. That's what my facilitator and the healer kept saying. That I said that like 3-4 times. And then at that moment was when I became one with the universe. I felt love and creation of the galaxies, and there was no other explanation to that. And that turned into me waking up and just starting to laugh. And I remember saying, "Oh shit, okay, interesting." And I was like, "I want to go again. I want to go again." And she looked at me and said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes." And that went from pure darkness and pain. Like it felt like I was in the infinite void and I was never going to come out. It felt like death. And all I can remember was just almost felt like purging of emotions, of thoughts and feelings, and crying and just saying, "Please forgive me. Please bring me back. Please bring me back." And then I woke up and just started laughing. I was like, I get it. So that was the kind of that was my experience with Bufo. And yeah, it's unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
So how did you take that forward? Like afterward, because I mean, you had the time to take that forward. It was during the pandemic. We were all in lockdown.
Yes.
And it was great for introspection,
yes.
from that perspective. But like, how did you move that forward?
So that's a great question. And it goes back to my word of caution, is though the experience was amazing and everything, there was zero integration. So I was not prepared. I didn't even understand what I needed to do with that information. I had my ceremony, and then they gave me a hug and said, "Have a nice day." And this was in the middle of New York City. And I just walked outside. And I'm like, well, what now?
Get a
Like,
cab.
yeah,
Oh
like
wait, I don't
what,
know if you can get cab.
yeah, like I'm like, what now? What am I supposed to do? And so it was maybe a 45-minute walk from my flat at the time, and I just decided to walk, and I didn't, and that turned into I took off of work the next day, and I didn't know how to process that. And that's my word of caution is when you're going to have a transcendental experience like this, or any kind of psychedelic experience, it is so important to pick the right facilitators and healers, and to integrate that into your life. And I didn't figure that out until later, where I decided to do it on my own and research. And I was luckily I had amazing people in my community that helped me integrate and gave me resources, which I took that into, the rest of my journeys moving forward. And so that was kind of my word of caution. And also the impotence to say, you know what, I'm ready to go again. I'm even more prepared. I'm even more well studied, and I want to do my homework and make sure I get the right facilitators and the right setting, and all of the classics, right set and setting, and all of that.
Yeah. And over time, have you developed like tools? Like you were doing journaling.
Yes.
Have you developed other tools that you're kind of going back to after an experience like that?
Yes. So aside from journaling, for me, my daily mantras have been so impactful, and these mantras came to me during my psychedelic experiences and my journeys. So journaling, daily mantra, breath work, and now I try to do yoga or some kind of body flow 3 times a week, ideally more than that, between my regular exercises. And that's really helped me. So I have like stickers all over my wall at my desk. And then also microdosing has been a big part of my day to day, and really integrating those massive journeys. But I would say the biggest thing is that mantra. That mantra has guided me, and it still gives me goosebumps because it connects me to those experiences and those ceremonies.
How did you develop your mantra? Was it like a TM mantra that was given to you, or was it different?
So one thing for me with my experiences, during my journeys, is I talk a lot. Everyone around me says I'm very talkative, and there are moments where I get into this meditative state, and I start rambling words, and they start connecting to my feelings and emotions. And that's how my mantras came alive and came to be, was during these. And I realized that they were happening every single time. It doesn't matter the dosage, the modality, the set and setting, these mantras continue to show up. So I was like, okay, there's something here. The universe is trying to tell me, the plant medicine is trying to tell me something here. So I incorporated that, and it's, I am the way, I am love, I am focus, I am clarity, I am compassion. And I repeat that every day. And then moments where, if I'm having work stress or life stress, I try to repeat that daily, and it helps quite a bit.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Lovely mantra. How did the people around you notice your transformation?
I wasn't a dick anymore, to be honest. It's plain and simple. Like I think I've always considered myself a nice guy, a loving guy, but I've always had this this chip on my shoulder of like, things should be this way, or this person should be this way. And that's taxing to people in my life, like my wife, my family members, and friends. And they're like, dude, chill out. And so I think this, a lot of very close people in my life have seen this change into me being a much more open, empathetic, loving person who tries, I'm not perfect, who tries not to judge people and jump to conclusions, and not having that short fuse that I've always had of things, the small things in life getting you upset, or like, why did this person park that way? And I go through these loopholes of, they're a terrible person, they don't know how to drive, I hate this place, it's like all these, and now it's like, okay, that's really annoying, but you know what? Such is life. Like, it's not that serious. Move on. Right. So small things like that have been kind of instrumental in my life.
Oh, that's nice. And did you have a toddler already by then, or baby?
Yes.
Around the time?
Yeah. So my baby was born during the pandemic. My son was born July of 2020.
Was he born after that first experience, or before?
Before my first experience.
And so, as you had that experience and you were a new parent, how did that maybe change your perspective on parenting and your role as a father?
I think for me, the perspective was, one, I am responsible for this human for the foreseeable future. So don't mess it up. And no, but I joke with that. I think for me, it was really around, I want to raise him I want to give him the tools to figure things out with his life. I want to give him access to things that I necessarily didn't have access to, and just for him to be a better person than I was growing up. And that to me was something that was really deeply instilled in me from the lessons I've learned from my father, good or bad, and just showing up, just being there to love him, to nurture him, to help him regulate his emotions, and not push those emotions down. An interesting example, my father is, in his late 70s, an old school Middle Eastern man, right? And there's moments where we go to their house with my son, and, he's a kid, he's a baby, he starts crying. And my dad's like, hey, no crying. Men don't cry. And I'm like, Dad, I love you, but one, he's a baby. Two, he's allowed to cry. People should be okay to cry. And he can't. My father is like, okay, I guess I get it, but I don't get it. And I want to shift that, break that cycle of what, that's what he was taught growing up, right? And I'm sure that's what his parents were taught. And now when my son cries, I'm like, are you okay? Are you frustrated? And, I don't think he understands completely, but he says, yeah, I'm frustrated. I'm like, okay, come here, give me a hug, buddy. And then he like moves on, versus me like shutting him down. And I need to work on that, because those old cycles come back where I'm like, hey, stop crying. I'm like, okay, you can cry, And so that's one very small example of how psychedelics and working on mental health and all these things have really shifted of how my perspective on parenting.
That's huge. I mean, it's touching on breaking a generational trauma and being very intentional on the gifts you want to pass down, because there are many. That's and and the traumas you want to say, I acknowledge them, but I don't need my kids to live in that trauma.
That's correct. That's correct.
Beautiful. And I'll bring religion now, since you touched on that earlier. But as you were going through those experiences, I mean, we just talked about your first experience, and I'm assuming, that was like 2-3 years ago, that continued the exploration, and your attitude toward religion shifted.
Yes.
And your spiritual side shifted.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that part of your journey?
Yeah. So just to back up, religion is such a light subject, so we'll just casually talk about this. So the kind of the construct of religion and this quote unquote fictional figure that is written in these man-made scripts, that was kind of the perspective that I had, the experience. And again, growing up as an Iranian, I was, by heritage, a Muslim, and my parents didn't practice it, but they had such hatred for Islam because they tied Islam to the revolution and the Islamic regime and the oppression. And so that to me was me growing up being like, yes, all religion is bullshit. Like this is fake. Like it's so I was this atheist, or this presumed atheist, who believed in that there was a higher power, but it was science, and
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it. But I was like, no, religion is fake. It's ridiculous. So that was like just kind of the prelude to what I'm about to mention. So my psychedelic journeys, my experiences really opened me up to my spirituality. To your point, the best way I can say it, these profound experiences were all centered around kind of three themes: oneness, love, and the God within us. And it was so like impactful that everything started making sense to me. God felt real. It still didn't feel to me this, again, I use fictional loosely from my perspective, this fictional religious character. It was that God was everything. I was part of that. And that to me was this moment of like, oh wow, God is real, God is everything, I am God, we are all God in this amazing, beautiful universe. And that was the moment where I had this realization that, yeah, God's real. Like the spirituality is real. There's higher beings, higher powers out there that and it's beautiful. And that to me was this moment of like, whew, okay, I'm not an atheist. I don't know what I don't know what I believe, but I do know that there's God, right? And that was kind of this very interesting moment for me.
Oh, that's great. And yeah, I'm curious how that's going to change your perspective on how you bring religion in your children's life as well.
Yes. It's still, I still have this triggering feeling when you bring up the word religion, right? And there's a part of me that really wants to be open-minded and say my children can grow up and if they are called to it, to practice whatever religion they want. And then there's this part of me that says, don't do it, do not conform, this is not, and so I'm still, like I said, I'm not perfect. I still have this, like, as we speak, have this visceral feeling of this dividedness. And I hope that I can give my children the tools to make the decisions on their own. And if it brings them joy and happiness and faith and they're doing good, then I hope that I am supportive in that regard.
No, I can relate absolutely to what you just said. It's religion is very powerful. It's extremely powerful in young minds. And some of them have been designed to be very powerful.
Correct.
On young minds. So how you bring it up into the lives of little ones, it's good to be very intentional about it.
Yes.
And I like how you framed it as, if they're feeling called to it. Yes. For me, it was Roman Catholic and kind of
right.
through schools, or early school, and being pushed into that. And so it was more kind of, not forced is a strong word, but it was more kind of implicitly forced
yes.
upon me, because I don't think anyone had bad intentions. You just go through the motions without questioning it. But as a result, you're impacted by that.
Correct.
And what's interesting,
well said, yeah.
Thank you. What's interesting is as you experience those deep transcendental experiences, you find the spiritual that maybe you didn't find earlier on in the religion, that was probably meant to be there all along in the religion, but maybe got lost over the years. I put a lot of maybes and ifs because I don't want to piss off too many people around religion. A lot of right. A lot of people, rightly so, are like it's a very important part of their lives. But at the same time, being able to, I think, bring the spiritual back into the religious, and I'm not talking about the organized religion. I'm just talking about right. the different practices that are out there. I think is beautiful. It's like bringing harmony and coming back to the source in a way.
I love that, bringing spirituality back to religion. I love that. I love that.
As a dad, as I don't practice religion, but I believe in spiritual growth and people freedom to adopt the path that they need to path or they're called to, like you were saying. Yeah, we don't have to talk more about religion. I don't want to make you cringe more.
No, it's okay.
It's practice. It's part of your journey.
Yes, exactly.
We don't have to do that here. So, business and leadership and work. Now you've got those. You've got some free time. You're in the pandemic. You've experienced Bufo. What are you going to do next work-wise? I mean, are you going back to what you were doing before, or like where do you go?
So I went back to what I knew, what I know, and for all intents and purposes, to conformity. I needed something that I knew I was good at, that I was going to make me money, and I had to do it. Have a family and bills, but this feeling of it just doesn't connect. I just don't. I'm not waking up motivated. I'm not. I just none of that made sense to me. It just felt that I was forcing myself into something that I've been doing for 20 years because that's what I know.
Did you mention exactly what you were doing?
So I was in tech and software sales, and for the latter half of my career, for the last 10 years, I've been a sales executive. So leadership roles, building, scaling sales teams at software companies, at startups, early stage companies. So that's pretty much what I did for my whole career. And it wasn't that I wasn't good at it. I'm very good at it. It's just that I found zero passion and connection to it in my life. And the amount of hours I would put into it, the stress that I would bring home with me, and it wasn't worth it to me. So that's when I started questioning purpose and work and how can I connect the two? Like, yes, as cliche as this sounds, connecting my job to my purpose was important to me, is important to me, because I enjoy what I do. I enjoy aspects of entrepreneurship and business, but I want to feel that I'm doing it for the right reasons and in the right environments and all of that. And so that was the big shift for me.
Do you think your relationship to your work was more about kind of how you were viewing the world, or meaning, could you do what you were doing by harmonizing the new you and the old job together, or was it the environment we're put in the software industry that is sometimes like a very high stress environment?
Yes to both. So to the latter, it made me a better leader. I definitely had a lot of lessons. I got a lot of lessons out of my plant medicine work and my ceremonies and just overall mental health. This is going to sound cliche, but I started becoming more of a conscious leader, and I started shifting a lot of how I showed up for the people in my life at work. So yes, it helped me, and it was a huge shift. But to your point, the environment, the unnecessary stress, the pressure, especially in sales, that you have to be successful. You have to hit your numbers. You have a board, you have investors, you have your CEO. It's like all these pressures of, wait, why the hell am I doing all of this? Like, I'm not the owner of this company. Like, why am I losing sleep for somebody else's vision and passion? And that to me was kind of the breaking point of, okay, I've learned and I've become a better leader actually, but it's the environment that needs to change as well.
Yeah. So, but you did go back to that, and I'm not criticizing this because I've gone through all that as well. And I believe there's a way to find harmony, but those environments are really challenging. And you can see how the tech industry is right now. There's a lot of layoffs happening, and
correct.
There's a lot of pressure. There's not just sales but products. There's a lot of artificial goals and timelines that sometimes you're like, why are we doing this to ourselves? And it sounds like, the similar to what you went through.
Exactly. I mean, yes, that's spot on, right? I went back to it because I didn't know what I wanted to do, how to do it, but I knew that I had to support my family, and and as amazing as my wife is and as supportive as she was, I still didn't want to, especially with a newborn and all these things. I just didn't want to take the leap of faith yet at that moment. But if you fast forward to this past December, it was this moment of everything started connecting for me, and that's when I decided to step away from the software industry in that way, in that regard, in that environment, and I quit my job.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It sounds like you were very practical in your approach, which is important.
Yes.
I've got a wise teacher who said, walk the medicine path with practical feet. Because a lot of a lot of time the messages you get from the medicine are so strong, they transcend you. You can feel them so deep in your heart. That's challenging to be practical in the next steps.
You're right.
And it creates sometimes a little bit of maybe it makes things even worse sometimes, because now you're going back to something that was the same thing as before, but now you've seen something else that could be.
That's correct.
How hard was that?
It was definitely one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. For all intents and purposes, things were going well at my company. I was making relatively good money. I had the support of the people around me. My team, from what I know, liked me, and so it was a really hard decision to walk away from that, because I didn't need to, quote unquote. I didn't need to. Or I wasn't let go or laid off or fired. So it's interesting because there was months of that came, of strategy, talking, ton of conversations with my wife and people in my life that were guiding me and supporting me and helping me figure out how to get to this point. And what's interesting is it wasn't actually a psychedelic journey. It was actually a meditation that became so clear to me. There was a few rough days at work, and I knew I wanted to quit, but I just was scared to take that step. I was like, well, nothing's working, so I'm going to just close my eyes, do some breath work, and meditate. And the profound feeling of certainty I got that said, you need to quit your job, felt so real that I opened my eyes. I'm like, that's it. I'm doing it. And that was the moment where I was like, okay, it's just the universe, everything is telling me that this is the right move, even though there's so much risk and uncertainty on the other side of this. And there was a part of me that I wanted to stay and just say, you know what, collect a paycheck until you figure something out. But I didn't want to do that to the people at that company, and especially my CEO who I worked for and my team. I was like, I'm doing you a disservice. Like, if I do this, as much as I want to, I also want to hold integrity for myself. So I decided to walk away, and it was the hardest but the best decision I've made in my career to date.
And that was six months ago, or you said last fall?
December was when I had the conversation, and I stayed through middle of January to help transition and all of that.
I'm sure there's a lot of people, more and more now, especially with the layoffs, that are going through similar introspection and experiences that I would call narrative shattering experiences.
Yes.
What would be your advice to them listening to this on how to approach their journey?
Look, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the decision I made came from a very privileged place. My wife works. She has a full-time job, a full-time salary. We were able to have a little bit of a nest egg that allowed me to make this decision. there are a lot of people out there that don't have this privilege or don't have the means to do that. So I empathize and sympathize with them because I've been there. But the stars aligned, and again, I want to be very clear that this came from a very privileged space and opportunity. But the what I would say is, if two parts, if you are in a privileged place to do it, like lead with your heart. If you are so disconnected with your life and your job and how it's making you feel negatively, like I'm getting goosebumps now. Like it's not worth it. It's just another job. Like if you have the means, take a step back, understand what brings you joy, what brings you excitement, and try to connect that into a revenue generating function, whether it's consulting, starting your own company, opening up, building a community. There's many ways. Like I'm happy to talk to anyone about that. But if you feel that, like, just do it. I promise you that as scary as it is, as frightening as it is on the other side, it's not as bad once you take the plunge. And for me, and that's coming from the privileged place. And my recommendation from, if you're not in a privileged place, to just say, I quit and I need to stop, is think about the time that you allocate watching Netflix or, wasting your time, quote unquote. I'll say that loosely. Use that time to build something, figure out, journal, ideate, like go walk outside in nature, like small things that bring ideas and positive influence in your mind, and use that as a stepping stone. So when you are in a comfortable position, take that plunge. One of my great advisors, mentors, told me that if I can monetize my skill sets outside of my W-2, my corporate job, use that as a cushion, a stepping stone into taking the plunge. So if you're really good at something, create a course, sell it online, become an advisor. Like I can teach you ways of how you can advise for a company because of your skill set, and use that as cushion to take that plunge. So I'll stop there. As you could tell, it's a very passionate topic for me.
Yeah.
But those are kind of the two angles from both sides that I would recommend, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about that.
No, this is great. And for people interested, I'll put your info in the show notes,
yes,
which, in YouTube, it's in the description. And on the podcast, it's kind of all over the place. Just look for the description. They all do it differently, but it's there. It's there. So look for it because it's valuable information. So that brings us. So you left your job in December. That brings us to the work you're doing with, I'd call it distributed angel investing in the psychedelic world.
Yes.
The Microdose Retreat and Wavepaths. Can you talk about each of these projects and why you picked them?
Some of them came to me in the most profound ways. At Mission Club, Rod Siraj, who's the founder, a fantastic human being. He also has a podcast called Minority Trip Report, which I think is really great.
Oh,
and
love the name.
Has so many. It's amazing. And I met him last year in Miami, and we just hit it off. And our life experiences, what, his ambitions, his goals in life, and how his upbringing, we connected. And when he told me that he had started this company, Mission Club, that to me was this aha moment of how can I bring in value to not only an emerging market like the psychedelic space, but also to people who need access, who want access to a diversified portfolio. Institutional investing comes from big family funds, right? VCs, and it's very much this very narrow network of people that are doing it. And then you have these outsiders of like, well, I have a 401k, I have a few $1,000s that I want to invest in, but I don't know where to go. Yeah. And I don't have access to it. So we want to help those people. We want to help those folks that have some money, they want to invest, they want to build generational wealth, but aren't part of a fund or don't want to go to a syndicate, an angel investing syndicate that charges them, massive subscription fees to join. We want to give them access to really interesting deals and opportunities in the psychedelic space. And that to me really resonated as someone who's trying to build generational wealth for my family and my family in the future. Really understanding why that's important is critical. That's Mission Club, and that to me was really it was an amazing mission, as to use that word. And then Retreat-Microdose, Corey, the founder, Corey Sue, we met through a mutual friend, and that to me was, there are a lot of microdosing companies out there and education platforms. There's a million of them. Yeah. But what stood out to me was this approach of having PhDs, MDs, psychotherapists building out a course, building out content that is helping microdosing curious people, psychedelic curious, not folks like you and I who are in this space. I think we're in a pretty good place, but people who are looking for ways to be better with their mental health, are looking for alternative medicines, but have no idea how to even jump in. That to me is what I think is a huge differentiator. So the medical, clinical aspect of it, and then taking the outsiders, the curious people that want to take the plunge into mental health. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And then lastly, Wavepaths. Great technology. You mentioned you were a beta user. Very cool app. And as a end user who has been in various ceremonies and settings where someone uses a YouTube channel, that all of a sudden in the middle of it, a commercial comes up and you start freaking out. And that's a small example, but
that's a great example.
It's a great example. This happened to me. We were in a deep meditative state in a ceremony, and all of a sudden, I don't even remember, it was like a hair replacement commercial came up, and we started freaking out because the music changed. And so I can only imagine in a clinical setting where
you got a hair replacement commercial, and for people who are listening, you don't have too much hair.
No, I don't. That's the last thing I need while I'm tripping on mushrooms.
Let's traumatize him some more with some hair replacement commercial during the ceremony.
And it was this loud music, and we thought somebody was hurt. And anyways, but in the clinical setting, changing the mood and the environment as based on the experience and the journey of the patient is so critical to your experience, as you know. And to have a tool that is intuitive, customizable, and unique, and it also for people that appreciate this, supports the musicians. This isn't a live streaming where musicians don't have copyright access. So all these things that tied, I was like, wow. And the founder, Mendel, is a fantastic human being, and wanted to be part of something and help out as much as I can.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I listened to the founder on the Third Wave podcast. He was interviewed a few years back. And,
excellent.
He was talking about Wavepath, and I was like, this is great. I'm so glad people are doing work in that space and music. Now, of course, there's more people now. It's slowly growing, probably a little behind other areas in the psychedelic space. But it's hard. Music is hard, but it's also probably one of the most important tools that if you know how to use as a facilitator, guide, or if you don't know how to use it, that's why things like Wavepath and there's other ones that are very important and useful.
Yeah, I agree, and that's kind of full circle to why I do what I do. My passion to help people, but as a business advisor, consultant, being part of an industry that has such amazing people like yourself and the folks that I'm helping and working with, it brings me a lot of joy. And I hope that I get to continue to meet great people and continue this amazing journey that I'm on.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot about human connection too. I love this because when you were talking about all those enterprises you were involved with, all those projects, just all about the connection with people. It's it kind of came to you, but you also put yourself out there. It
That's
sounds like
correct.
Miami was probably the Wonderland
Yes, it was Wonderland.
convention.
It was a cold email. I decided that I wanted to introduce myself to 30 strangers via email before the conference. And I did my homework, did a little bit of research
Yeah.
on them. And I said, hey, I'm really interested in just saying hello and meeting you. I'd love to start a conversation. And that was my goal, is like talk to 30 strangers and introduce yourself and get to know them, most importantly. And that sparked this amazing wave of connections and work and connectedness. So it's amazing.
What it's funny, I'm thinking about you, as a dad, on this journey, this beautiful journey, and you're doing great work here, connecting with others on that journey.
Thank you.
I love to share advice for other dads,
Yes, please.
no, for you. And I was going to ask you I feel like sometimes it's, I don't want to play the victim, but it can be hard on a dad, yes, a man who was brought up maybe in more traditional settings, and you talked about it, when you talked about emotions, and your father and your son, and what advice, regardless of the psychedelics or the psychedelic journey, but for the other dads out there that maybe were brought up in those more traditional settings and are trying to find their direction now, like what would you tell them? To kind of help them through that identity of the new dad versus what they were brought up in.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say one thing about the resources and support that got me to plant medicine. Additionally, was joining a men's group. And I joined a group of men through an organization where we literally sat on a Zoom once a week for 90 minutes and talked about our emotions and became vulnerable. It was like strangers, like men who don't do that in a private setting had to do it in front of strangers. And that really helped so much. So going back to this advice, I think for fathers, and I'm learning this every day, is being okay with having emotions and being vulnerable and expressing them. I think I'm just getting emotional even talking about it. Is like when you are able to talk about your feelings as a man specifically, it gives you so much peace and clarity in everything in life, in supporting your partners and marriage and partnership, in supporting your children. That's it. Be vulnerable, beautiful. Open up, talk about your emotions and feelings. Start with yourself. That's the hardest part, is look at yourself in the mirror or journal and say, I am sad today. I want to cry, or I am happy today, or I'm frustrated. Whatever that feeling is, acknowledge it, put it out there, start with yourself, and then start getting into the habit of telling people how you feel. And it's okay. Like you're not weak. You're not coming across as like not manly. I think the most alpha manly men in this world are so in tune with their emotions. They cry, they talk about their emotions. That's what, in my opinion, a true man is that they are in tune with their emotions. And when you can be in tune with your feminine side, that's when you can be a better person to women in your life, to children, to yourself. So I'll stop there.
Beautiful. Now, what would you tell leaders out there, man leaders, who go from the old school of thoughts on leadership and managing their team to the new school of thought?
Being deeply empathetic. Start with understanding the people that you manage or work with. I'm so sorry. Start with working with the people that you manage, and get to know them as humans, as people. And the moment you understand their motivations, their personal lives, why they do what they do, I promise you that you will get, for selfish reasons even, you would get more output from them, more work, better work, than just treating them like another number, another cog in the wheel. So starting with that's any leader that I would give advice to is get to know your people first in a deep, personal way. The moment you do that, it opens up so many doors to success, to leadership, to accountability. People want to work hard for people that they trust, they believe in, and know that they are, for all intents and purposes, being protected, right? And that would be my biggest feedback to leaders.
Yeah.
And honestly, you can go through. And I think I mentioned this to you or somebody, like, you can read all the texts and connect the dots. There's kind of like six pillars in my mind: communication, trustworthy, optimism, self-awareness, deep empathy, and doing hard things. That to me is from my perspective, my opinion, the pillar of what a successful leader or conscious leader should look like. And that happens to also be your experiences of how you should approach plant medicine and your journeys and I can talk about that, but those are kind of the same pillars when you are in deep ceremony and deep introspection of how to go through those journeys.
It's beautiful. We're almost at time. I can totally relate to everything you just shared. Such good advice. I'll actually probably certainly put that as a short clip too, because there's a lot of goodness there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any, before we go, do you have any other, I want to pull some cards for you if you're open to that. But do you have any other questions or topics you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I think from a question that I have for you, and you've been doing this for a while and you've had awesome guests, is, for me, especially someone who has been spending so much more time in the plant medicine space and healing, helping people understand, how do you help people realize that plant medicine isn't the answer? It's a tool, right? It's a tool for you to integrate in your real life, the real life that you do, your day-to-day, your meditations, your journaling, your yoga is what makes you better and heal, versus the plant medicine just opens up that gate. So how do you do that? How do you maybe give advice to people who all of a sudden, have a journey or a ceremony and they realize, oh, I have all the answers now. I am healed. And I was one of them, I was like, well, yeah, I'm perfect now. I am God. Everything is perfect, So,
well, I feel we're all on different paths on our journeys, and sometimes you need to let people realize that. You need people to kind of maybe be naive for a while, and think they have all the solution, and maybe stumble a little bit to realize, well, they don't, and it requires work in the real life. Now, at the same time, you want to make sure people spend the time integrating their lessons. The plant medicine, in my mind, is just a way to feel certain things that you could experience in the real life, or to know where you could be and see different perspectives. And we have a problem right now with the psychedelic industry, where there's so much focus on the substances.
Yes.
And the psychedelic industry is a little bit torn, I believe, because on one hand, it's following the pharmaceutical business model.
Correct.
Where it's like, well, you take a pill, it's convenient, it's scalable, and you feel better. But there's also so much work in your journey, on the spiritual journey, little things you tweak in your life. You talked about Netflix, for example, cutting that out, doing rituals in the morning, doing little prayers,
Yes.
Not religious prayers, but learning how to pray, period.
I love that.
Things like that are important in our lives. At the end, I do believe heaven is all around us, but we have the power to make it so. It's not somewhere that we hunt in something we hunt in the psychedelic experience. Though some of those experiences can be beautiful, but we can't live in those experiences forever. I mean, Ram Dass talks about it.
Yes.
He went down that path, and coming down from those mountains is very painful, can lead to depression and more problems. So being able to harmonize that spiritual side of yourself, like you talked about, into your real life, I think it's the biggest gift we can give ourselves for our journeys. So I mean, that's what I would tell people. I try to share journeys on the podcast to help people understand that hey, you don't even have to do psychedelics. You can do breath work. Like this is not, everybody has their own journey, and we also have to respect that. So there's a lot of ways to get there, but it's all of them. I think I haven't found one that doesn't require personal work. All of them require
absolutely right.
work.
You are right. So. Thank you. No, that's great.
You got to do the work, and
you
yes, an ayahuasca or a bufo or mushroom ceremony can look like work, and it is work. But the bigger work is what happens next after that.
Exactly.
So, on that note, if you allow me, I will pull a card for you.
Yes, please.
This is using the Earth Magic deck. So I'm showing it here. And this is a deck I've been using for several years now. My wife trained me on it. It's an oracle deck, and it's very simple. And I'm not very good at adding lots of colors. And I explain what I'm doing. I'm very efficient. Maybe that's my male side or engineering side. But my first question to you would be, in your mind, you don't have to say it. It's like a birthday wish. Ask a question that you'd like some advice on or help on for you in your journey, and you let me know once you've done that. Okay, great. And then now we'll knock 3 times. I will call upon the oracles, the powers that be, the forces that controls our journeys, whatever we believe in. I will call them to answer your question and to give you the guidance you need. And I will focus on you, Sabba, on what we've discussed, on your family and your question, and start shuffling the cards. Actually, this one just came right out. It's a flying one. This one is Summer Solstice, and it's radiance.
Wow.
And so there is. I'm hoping one camera will capture this one. So if you're listening, I just showed the card. It's the card of so we're approaching spring. It's a beautiful sun. It's like orange, red sun. It's a card to represent the summer solstice, and the message is around radiance. So I'll read that message quickly, and I will send you more details afterward, and we'll see afterward if that answers your questions. Let the radiance of the sun inspire your inner radiance to shine forth. Release your concerns about what may happen in the future and focus on appreciating everything you have that is good and right. Allow Father Sun to take away your worries and cares. Do something physically active to stimulate your inner light. Dance, sing, but most important, get outdoors. Do not let any negative thoughts or habits stop you. When you are in love with life, you naturally radiate that love. During this part of your cycle, your capacity to love is greatly amplified. In one of those supreme ironies of life, the more love you give, the more returns to you. It starts by allowing the radiant being you truly are to be expressed into the world. Smile a little more, notice the beauty of nature, see the humor in the paradoxes of life. Show your love, especially to those with whom you are closest. Then smile even more and watch how the world around you lights up.
Wow. That answered my question.
It did?
Yes. Oh, that's amazing.
I
That's
love it.
amazing.
I love
That's
it. I
great.
love it. I
Yes,
love it.
please send that to me. That was amazing.
I will send you the card. And, I take this, my background is in engineering. So if you told
Yes.
me 10, well, maybe 15 years ago that I'd be drawing cards and having discussions around the messages that come out, I would not have believed you. But
Yes. Yeah.
the more I draw cards, the more we have interesting discussion, deep reflections, and strong messages that actually answer the questions most of the time. Just
You're right. I love it.
really amazing.
Wow. That was amazing. Thank
Great.
you.
Well, I'm glad I could do that. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn. So it's just my name, Sabba Nazhand, SABBA-NAZHAND. And then on Instagram, Sabba GETZEHN, Zen, which means mind or consciousness in Farsi. Either one, you can reach out to me, and I'll be glad to talk to you on any topic.
Great, wonderful, and I'll put all that in the show notes as well. Well, thank you, Sabba, so much for your time, your insights, sharing your journey. And it was
Thank you
great.
for having me. This was amazing.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, follow me on Instagram at Leadershipedelics, or stop by my website and say hi at fooyad.com. That's F-O-O-Y-A-D. There's a lot going on, and I'd love to hear from you all, the listeners that tune in every week. And if you have suggestions for future guests, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm there, and I'd love to get more guests on the show. Thank you. Have a great day.